One day, the Taiwanese government conducted research. They have just discovered a magic stone called the Hypermatrix, and it was said that this stone is capable of emitting power for whoever has it. Then, one day, an evil scientist named Cube stole the stone because he intended to rule the world. To stop his actions, the government was assisted by a superhero, and people call him Flash because he has the lightning power. But unfortunately, Flash accidentally broke the Hypermatrix stone. Seeing that, Cube put the stone fragments into his own body so that he became a crystal human. As a result, there was a big explosion which killed thousands of people. Since then, Flash disappeared and Cube started to mess up the city. Fortunately, there was a new superhero named Sonic who had the power of high-frequency sound, and thanks to his power, he was able to defeat Cube. 10 years later, Taiwan returned to being a peaceful country because the evil scientist had disappeared. But the children who have lost their parents had to live in an orphanage. Here, there was a boy named Wang Yichai who was playing hide and seek. He hid in an empty building and got into a box. Unfortunately, he was trapped in the box. Because the boy didn't come out, his two friends looked worried, especially Wang's good friends, Sin and Jian. After searching for hours, Sin finally found the empty building, and in this place, she sneezed many times, because every time she felt worried or afraid, she would sneeze. Not long after that, she finally found Wang, who almost fainted in the box. But Sin felt relieved after knowing that Wang was still alive. Because of this incident, Wang promised that if he played hide and seek again, he would not hide in a box. A few days later, Wang was back to his usual activities. Apart from that, he was also able to play with Jian again. But while they were playing on the swings, they were approached by naughty kids who always bullied them. Those naughty kids then forced Wang and Jian to eat rice from the trash can, which if eaten could cause diarrhea. Because Wang and Jian didn't want to do that, they immediately ran away, and fortunately, Sin appeared at the right time. After knocking out those bullies, Sin invited her two friends to hide in an empty building before the bullies hit her back. Then in a room, they found a door that was connected to an old alley. It turned out that the alley led them to the forest. At first, they were happy because they found a new place. However, there was a lot of lightning, which was very dangerous. When those kids were afraid, the lightning suddenly stopped striking. Unexpectedly, the person who stopped it was Flash, the superhero. Apparently, he's been hiding in the forest all this time. On the other side, Wang and his friends found Flash's safe house. Apart from that, they also saw Flash's costumes and photos. They also looked happy to be able to meet the hero. Unfortunately, Flash didn't want to get out of the house and instead kicked them out. He didn't want to show himself because he still felt guilty about the incident 10 years ago. Because of his power, Cube turned into a crystal human and massacred the townspeople. Here, it was also revealed that Flash was the person who donated to the orphanage without telling his identity. He just wanted the orphans not to be abandoned and have a good life. After returning from the forest, Wang and Jian were locked up by the caretaker for going out without permission. Meanwhile, Sin, who was not punished, sent some food so that they didn't starve. Because of Sin's kindness, Wang liked her more and more. The next day, Sin cut Wang's hair while grumbling because she couldn't stop thinking, why did Flash become a coward, even though he was once the strongest hero in Taiwan? Sin also said that she only likes brave people and never giving up. Hearing this, Wang was determined to be the bravest person in the world, and when he grew up, he promised to marry Sin. 5 years later, they both grew up to be teenagers, and they would soon leave the orphanage because they were considered adults. Soon, Sin, who now looks more beautiful, would leave the orphanage to become a teacher in the capital, while Wang had to wait another year if he wanted to follow her. Shortly, Sin said goodbye to her two friends. She then promised to always keep them informed and would not forget them both. Since then, these three best friends have exchanged news via letters. Thanks to these letters, Wang and Jian have become more enthusiastic about being able to graduate from the orphanage school and being able to follow Sin to the capital. One day, Sin had just returned from work, but when she entered the boarding house, she felt something was wrong, and suddenly, she hit someone who turned out to be Wang. Even though he was battered, Wang still felt happy because he could meet again with the girl he liked. Wang and Jian then celebrated Sin Sin's birthday together, but unfortunately, the cake was ruined. That night, they stayed at Sin Sin's place because they couldn't afford the boarding house yet. Before going to sleep, Sin Sin said that she wanted to take them for a walk around the city. The next day, after looking for a job, Wang and Jian went to a carnival. There they saw Sin Sin playing with the kids, but suddenly an armed group robbed the place. In the middle of the shootout, Wang was desperate to run to help Sin Sin, who was being held hostage by the robbers. But unfortunately, the police forbade it because it was too dangerous. At the same time, the robbers suddenly fell because of the ultrasonic sound. And sure enough, Sonic appeared again to fight the bad people. Seeing that Sonic had succeeded in saving Sin Sin, Wang felt very jealous. As a man, he felt that he had failed to protect the girl he loved. Therefore, at this point, he was determined to keep his promise when he was kid to become the strongest and bravest person in the world. Because of that, he decided to learn to wrestle. On the other hand, Jian actually wanted to become a policeman after seeing the robbery. In the end, these two friends chose to separate temporarily. After that, without wasting any time, Wang immediately went to the kickboxing gym. There he was belittled by the athletes because of having a skinny body. Hearing the taunts, Wang challenged one of them to a fight. After being humiliated in front of many people, Wang finally returned to the forest to learn with Flash. When he got there, Wang saw the former superhero reading Playboy magazine. Flash spontaneously threw away the magazine and threw Wang out right then and there. But this young man didn't just give up, he kept trying to persuade Flash to train him to fight. He also brought up the past when he was thrown away by his parents, and this made Flash touched because he also felt thrown away and ostracized by society. Finally, Flash was willing to train Wang, but he could only train his physical and fighting skills because superpower is innate and cannot be inherited. After that, this lightning man immediately slapped Wang many times to test his body's endurance. Then Flash told Wang to train hard until his nerves were in pain, so the training began. 1 year later, Wang managed to improve his physique and also his punching technique. Not only that, he couldn't feel pain anymore, he could even put his hand in boiling water without feeling the slightest heat. Feeling that he was ready, Wang said goodbye to his teacher to return to the capital. Wang then immediately went to the same kickboxing gym to do a rematch, but in the middle of their fight, they were stopped by the owner of the gym, Bruce. Even though she was a woman, she was known to be very fierce, so it's not surprising that her name is similar to a man. Then Bruce offered his athletes a match against the strongest fighter in the city. As a handsome and brave man, Wang volunteered without hesitation, but the condition was that he had to cover his own medical costs if he was injured. Apart from that, Bruce would take 70% of the money earned. However, Wang still agreed because the most important thing for him is wrestling. That same evening, the match started, and Wang had just entered the ring, but he was already overwhelmed. He was not given the opportunity to attack his opponent at all. Before the second round continued, Bruce said that if Wang could survive for 9 rounds, then he would be given the opportunity to fight again. Hearing this, Wang became even more enthusiastic, plus, Jian came to support him. So, the match continued immediately. Even though Wang didn't win, he was able to survive until the 9th round, and according to the agreement, Bruce would give him another chance. Bruce also gave 30% of the money from the match. Not long after, Jian approached Wang with a proud smile. He never thought that his friend, who was often bullied, had now become a kickboxing athlete. On the other hand, Wang was also proud of Jian, who had been accepted into the police academy and became a police candidate. That evening, Sin Sin invited them to dinner. However, it turned out that Sin Sin already had a boyfriend, and this made Wang and Jian jealous, especially because Sin Sin's boyfriend looked very nerdy. Here, Wang and Jian warned the nerdy man to take good care of Sin Sin, and if he hurt her, they won't stay silent. While having dinner, Sin Sin's boyfriend accidentally sneezed, and at the same time, Sunglass broke. Unexpectedly, it turned out that this geeky guy was Sonic. Jian suddenly looked happy about this because he really admired Sonic. On the other hand, Wang actually felt even more jealous. What's more, he was only considered a younger brother by the woman he liked. In fact, Wang had prepared a watch as a gift to confess his feelings. But in the end, the gift had no meaning anymore. The next day, Wang came back to Flash, and this time, he wanted to know how to get superpowers so he could win Sin Sin's heart. However, Flash also didn't know because his powers were innate. In the middle of the conversation, the television broadcast news about the Hypermatrix Stone. It was reported that the Taiwanese government had succeeded in opening the contents of the stone fragments. They said that the energy contained in it had the same power as nuclear energy. Therefore, the government promised to protect it from being controlled by bad people. After returning from Flash's place, Wang immediately read superhero comics, and apart from that, he also used extreme methods to get superpowers. As a result, Wang was repeatedly admitted to the hospital with serious injuries. Even though he couldn't feel pain, his body and mind was still damaged. Then one day, Wang was visited by Sonic, who felt sorry for him. While there was a superhero beside him, Wang asked for tips and tricks to get strength, but just like Flash's answer, Sonic also didn't know how. Long story short, Wang finally recovered and returned to training as usual. Not long after that, Bruce came and said that Wang had officially become a kickboxing athlete. Not only that, he would also soon have his first match against a fighter from Japan. Of course, Wang was very happy with the news. Wang was so happy that he told Sin Sin, and to celebrate this good news, they had dinner together at a street food stall. While eating, Sin Sin said that she would return to the orphanage to teach there. In the middle of the conversation, news was broadcasted that Sonic had just been defeated by Dark Cube. Feeling worried, Sin Sin went to the hospital, which was heavily guarded by special forces. However, these troops didn't realize that Dark Cube was monitoring them through a B-shaped drum. The next evening, Wang finally competed professionally for the first time. But unfortunately, he had a lot on his mind because Sin Sin cared more about Sonic. Because of this, Wang was very overwhelmed in this match. Thanks to his strong body, Wang survived until the 9th round, and the audience even called him a stone wall. After the match, Wang went viral and appeared on TV because he is considered a fighter who is not afraid of death. After becoming a famous fighter, Wang invited Sin Sin to the fighting arena while showing off his punches technique. Shortly, Wang has participated in 16 fights. However, of all these matches, Wang never won or lost. Therefore, Bruce will prepare a match between Wang and the fighter from Japan who has never been defeated. Even in 60 matches, he always won by a landslide, and what's even crazier, 32 athletes were completely paralyzed after fighting him. In addition to increasing his strength, this match would also prove whether Wang can survive until the last round. Feeling challenged, Wang returned to Flash's place to ask for advice. Here, Flash will teach him a very deadly blow. But before that, he has to learn the physique of his opponent and train harder to strengthen his muscles. On the other hand, Sin Sin was teaching fine arts at her school. She was shocked when her students drew Wang, the stone wall. Not long after, Sonic, who had recovered, came to visit Sin Sin. He intended to propose to her because he needed a wife to accompany him. But for some reason, Sin Sin suddenly remembered Wang and decided to reconsider Sonic's proposal first. Meanwhile, they both did not realize that Dark Cube was monitoring from his base. After seeing what happened, this evil scientist knew that Sin Sin was Sonic's weakness. The next day, Sin Sin came to Wang, who was practicing his punches. However, she didn't come to encourage him. She instead wanted to persuade him to cancel the match with his opponent, because as a friend, Sin Sin was very worried about Wang's safety. Unfortunately, Wang misunderstood and thought that Sin Sin had underestimated his abilities, even though he did all this to get Sin Sin's attention. Hearing this, Sin Sin was very angry because since they were kids, she always paid attention to Wang, but she couldn't have a romantic relationship with Wang. At this point, Sin Sin said that she will soon marry Sonic in the hope that Wang will understand and look for another woman, but this actually made Wang even more emotional. Because of Sin Sin's words, Wang became more enthusiastic in training and wanted to prove that he was really strong. Long story short, match day arrived. This time, Wang was determined to be a winner even though his opponent was much stronger than him. Apart from that, he also got support from the audience. Even Sin Sin also watched the match on television with the orphanage children, because even though they had a fight, she still cared about Wang. After getting into the ring, Wang immediately gave the signal according to Flash's teachings, and without much fussing, the epic match began. When Wang almost lost the match, he hallucinated and saw Sonic, who underestimated his ability. Seeing this, Wang immediately got back up to prove to everyone that he was not a weak person. Thanks to the blow taught by Flash, Wang was able to surprise his opponent, and from here on, his chances of winning became even greater. At the same time, Sin Sin and the orphanage children were still watching the kickboxing match, but not long after, there was a suspicious sound from behind. When Sin Sin was about to check it, suddenly, someone attacked her. Meanwhile, Wang resumed the match, and unlike the initial rounds, this time he was really able to control the ring and made his opponent overwhelmed. But when he was about to attack his opponent, he saw the screen that had just been hacked by Darkcube. This surprised everyone, especially since this evil scientist has kidnapped Sin Sin and the children from the orphanage. Darkcube threatened to kill them if Sonic and the government didn't hand over the Hyper Matrix to him. Hearing Darkcube's threat, Wang decided to withdraw from the match because the safety of the world was more important than becoming a champion. Wang and Jian went to Flash's house so he could help Sin Sin and prevent Darkcube's crimes. He was even willing to kneel down as long as his teacher was willing to go out and help the world. Unfortunately, Flash refused and didn't want anything to do with Darkcube anymore. Apart from that, he also still felt guilty for the incident 18 years ago. Here, Wang and Jian felt very disappointed in him. On the other hand, Darkcube and his men were torturing Sin Sin, and he wouldn't stop until he got what he wanted. Not long after, Special Forces arrived with a Hyper Matrix, and while the troops were negotiating with Darkcube, Wang and Jian secretly entered the base and slaughtered all the guards. Unfortunately, Wang was shot in the stomach. Even though he couldn't feel the pain, his kidney would definitely be disrupted. Then, after finishing Darkcube's men brutally, Wang and Jian saved the orphans and the caretaker. But strangely, Sin Sin was not there. On the other side, Darkcube was checking the authenticity of the Hypermatrix, and it turned out that the government only sent the imitation. Because of that, Darkcube went berserk and released his crystal power. And because he didn't get the real Hypermatrix, Darkcube finally decided to kill Sin Sin. However, Wang wouldn't let it happen and immediately confronted Darkcube. When these three friends were almost in despair, Flash suddenly appeared with his power. Then, without further ado, Flash challenged Darkcube for a rematch, and the fight was very epic. Seeing his teacher trapped in a crystal, Wang got up with his remaining strength. Even though his stomach had been cut open, his fear had not diminished at all. Not only that, Wang also realized one thing, that the superpower he had was not lightning or crystals, but his courage. He always braved to do anything to save people he loved. Then, Wang bravely walked towards Darkcube. Thanks to Wang's deadly fist, he finally succeeded in destroying Darkcube's body. Meanwhile, Sonic arrived late. Sin Sin looked very worried about Wang, who was no longer able to get up again. But this brave young man actually smiled because he had kept his promise when he was still a kid. From now on, he will be known as the bravest man in the world. Before going to the hospital, Wang expressed his feelings to Sin Sin and asked her to marry him. But when his proposal was accepted, he actually breathed his last breath. The end.